This angry old man believes that there are two types of people in the world. The ones who follow the law, and the ones who need to be punished. And he's about to do something absolutely insane to prove his point. He's dumped his life savings into a custom-built SUV specifically designed to torment anyone foolish enough to break in. And this deadbeat Eddie here just took the bait. Now he's going to be trapped for days at the mercy of this deranged boomer who wants nothing more than to watch him suffer. So we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the trap car in Locked. This guy is about to wish that he'd just gone to prison instead. Eddie here is a deadbeat dad who's struggling just to get by. Today, he's $500 short of a new alternator for his van, leaving him with no way to pick up his daughter Sarah from school, and the mechanic here is not cutting him any breaks. He keeps arguing with the guy until it gets physical, but during the scuffle, he's able to grab his wallet, pocketing the cash as they throw him back out onto the street. Desperate, he starts calling everyone on his contacts list asking for a loan, but when that doesn't work, he goes back to looking for some more stuff to steal. And as for the money, he spends it all on a Red Bull and some scratch-offs from the corner store. He goes right back to stealing from cars a minute later, and that's when he spots the mother of all luxury SUVs sitting in an unprotected parking lot. Trying the door, he's excited to find out that it's actually unlocked, but little does he know that he's just made his biggest mistake. It turns out that there's nothing of value in there besides a fancy pair of sunglasses, and throwing them in his bag, he tries the handle only to find that now the doors won't open, realizing with a shock that he's just been locked inside. Okay, I swear, this guy was willing to do anything except fill out a job application. Sorry, Eddie, we all make mistakes in life, but ditching your own daughter to go on a petty crime spree is just wrong, brother, and that's why you just f***ed up. Alright, where do I even begin? I love how you're acting like the mechanic was the bad guy when at least he's out here trying to make a semi-honest living. Sure, you need the van to make money, but he needs money to run his business and pay his employees. No offense, but obviously you're not the most trustworthy guy, and none of your friends were willing to spot you cash. Probably because you never pay them back, so why should he? Then, as soon as you did get your hands on $20, stolen from a guy who earned it by the way, you spent it all on lottery tickets, and I think this tells us everything we need to know about your priorities. Do you even know what your chances of winning one of those things are? You literally would have been better off using the money to buy some cardboard and a marker and try to crowdfund the rest of it the old-fashioned way. The worst part is that the trap couldn't have been more obvious. I mean, have you never heard of a bait car before? They literally did 5 seasons of a show about it, and you're supposed to be a car guy. So did the name Dolus not come as a red flag to you? I've never heard of that company before, and that's because it doesn't exist. But a quick Google search would have told you that it's a Latin word meaning deceit, trickery, or fraud. That's right, dumbass, the car was literally telling you in big bold letters that this was a mistake. But even if you really are just another casualty of society, you deserve everything that's coming your way just for littering. Yeah, don't think I didn't see that. The planet's not your dumpster, buddy. Now, have fun in this four-wheeled saw trap because it looks like you just f***ed up. Keeping his composure, Eddie goes to every door trying the handles one at a time, but even when he throws his shoulder into it, they don't seem to budge. Starting to get more desperate, he climbs into the trunk and wraps a hand in his jacket, trying as hard as he can to punch out the back window, but once again, no luck. This time he crawls into the back seat and starts kicking the glass, but even that isn't enough to do any damage. And just as he's about to run out of ideas, the touchscreen suddenly turns on. A moment later, the car starts receiving a phone call from a contact labeled "Answer Me," but Eddie here refuses to follow the instructions, going back to his escape plan instead. What he hasn't realized yet is that he's being watched through several pinhole cameras all over the vehicle, and the caller just keeps letting it ring every time that he tries to ignore them. Climbing back into the trunk, he finds a tire iron hidden underneath the floor, but no matter how hard he swings it, the glass still holds up. By now, it's starting to set in that he's in some serious shit, but he isn't out of options yet. Pulling off the door panel, he starts trying to unlock it manually, only to accidentally slice his arms on the exposed metal. As he looks closer, he realizes that the doors are reinforced with solid steel plates, and it looks like he won't be calling for help either because his phone is completely cut off from getting any signal. The cut on his arm is only getting worse, so with no other options that he can think of, he reluctantly reaches for the tablet and decides to answer the call. At first, there's only silence on the other end, but after a moment, he hears the friendly voice of an old, wealthy British man timidly asking if he's there. Introducing himself as William, the man explains that he owns the SUV, but when Eddie here starts cursing him out for trapping him inside, he activates a taser in the seat that sends a powerful jolt of electricity through his body, laughing with joy at the shocked look on his face. Getting more worried, he nervously asks to be let out, but the man says that he's not going anywhere until they've had a chance to talk, and starts explaining how thieves have already broken into his car 6 times before. You know, that makes Eddie here lucky number 7, and this time, he's taking matters into his own hands. According to the owner, the criminals always get away without being caught by the police, and that's why he decided to catch one for himself. Hearing this, Eddie panics and goes for the only option that he hasn't tried yet, pulling out a pistol from his bag and firing it directly at the window, but it ricochets off the glass and hits him straight in the leg. Okay, what an absolute f***ing disaster. Eddie here just put on a step-by-step demonstration of how exactly not to react to this situation. The first thing that he needs to do now is assess the wound, and for once, he might actually get some good news. It looks like the bullet hit him in the back of the calf, about 2 or 3 inches below his knee, putting it in the region of his gastrocnemius muscle. Based on its dark color and the steady flow of the bleeding, it seems like the blood is coming from a vein, not an artery, making it a lot more manageable and not as immediately life-threatening. You actually don't want to go straight to a tourniquet for this kind of injury because prolonged use of one can cause more damage than necessary. Instead, he should take off his t-shirt and apply direct pressure to the wound, compressing the blood vessel to stop bleeding. If the blood continues to pool for more than 90 seconds, that's when he needs to use the sleeve of his sweatshirt to tear off a strip from his t-shirt to make a tourniquet, wrapping it tightly above the wound and using the sunglasses or a pen as an extra wine glass to twist it extra tight. You know what I mean? If he treats it properly and keeps the leg elevated, then he can get himself back in stable enough condition for long-term survival, but if not, then he'll most likely be dead in a few hours. So dealing with the wound, it should be his first priority, yeah. After that, it's back to figuring out how to get out of this car. I mean, he's already tried the tire iron, but there was another tool in the trunk that he completely overlooked: the scissor jack. These are designed to lift vehicles weighing over 1 ton, meaning that they can exert thousands of pounds of force if used correctly. Now, the trunk doors on most SUVs use hydraulic struts to open and shut, so what he needs to do here is wedge the jack in between the floor and the liftgate, and then slowly apply pressure upward and outward, forcing a mechanical failure and allowing him to pry open the door manually. Even if it's not enough to climb out, he might create an opening that allows him to communicate with the outside world and call for help. Alright, meat shields, it's time to talk about something serious. If you've ever been seriously hurt in an accident, car, work, or jigsaw related, you might not realize the true value of your injury. In fact, you could actually be eligible for millions of dollars in compensation. Now, here's something crucial to understand. Insurance companies often try to take advantage of people in these situations, offering settlements that are far less than what you deserve. I mean, can you believe that? But Morgan & Morgan, yeah, they don't play that game. They fight to get you the money you're rightfully owed if you become their client. I mean, just in the past couple of months, they've secured incredible verdicts for clients in life-altering car crash cases. $12 million in Florida, which was 34 times the highest insurance offer, and $26 million in Philadelphia, a staggering 40 times their initial offer. And the best part? You don't pay a single penny in attorney's fees unless they win your case. That's right, the fee is absolutely free unless you win. Look, all law firms are not created equal. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm for a reason. With over 1,000 attorneys across all 50 states, they've built a reputation on winning like a lot. Fighting big insurance companies can take a big law firm, and they are ready to take on companies of any size to protect your rights. It only takes a few minutes to find out if you even have a case, so don't overthink it. If you've been in an accident or suffered any injury, taking action now is the smartest thing you can do to protect yourself. Morgan & Morgan have even modernized the entire process. You can submit a claim and communicate with their legal team directly from your smartphone. It's just that easy. If you've suffered a serious injury, your case could be worth significant compensation, and a life-changing resolution could be just a few clicks away. It's simple to get started. You can begin your claim with Morgan & Morgan now at forthepeople.com/beat or by scanning the QR code on screen from your phone's camera. Remember, you guys don't have to go through this one alone. Thanks to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's video, and without further ado, let's get back to the show. Horrifically injured, Eddie falls down begging for help, but the man just keeps zapping him with the taser and acting like he hit the wrong button. The more blood that he loses, the more that he starts to panic, until he finally spots a woman passing by the car. Shouting as loud as he can, he's relieved when she turns to look at the window, but she's only using the tinted glass to touch up her lipstick. And even though they're only a few feet apart, the owner has the car so soundproofed that it's impossible for anyone outside to hear him scream. Annoyed, the man asks Eddie to stop bleeding on his car, clearly having fun at the thought of his pain. He tries using the string from his hoodie as a tourniquet, but there's nothing that he can do to slow down the blood loss, and he starts to worry that he isn't going to make it much longer. Begging him to call an ambulance, Eddie gets so desperate that he tries calling 911 himself, but he still can't get any signal. And the man explains in his sarcastically reassuring way that he'd already be unconscious if the wound was fatal. Instead, he just changes the subject right back to the car, determined to get his point across, whether the prisoner wants to listen or not. Calling him a psychopath, he defies the man one more time, but the owner sets him straight with another zap from the taser, and he finally decides to stop pushing his luck. Getting frustrated, the man says that his ultimate goal is to make Eddie here understand the consequences of his actions, and he isn't going to stop until he's truly sorry for what he's done. By now, he's lost so much blood that he's starting to lose consciousness. And as the man launches into a detailed explanation of his entire life story, he takes the very last sip of his water before finally passing out from his injuries. But the truth is that this nightmare is just beginning. Several hours later, Eddie here eventually wakes up to the sound of rain hitting the sunroof. It looks like he survived his injuries, but what's more surprising is that someone bandaged him up while he was asleep. As he starts coming back to his senses, he remembers that it's been a while since he had any water to drink, but the only bottle that he had with him is completely dry. Oh, he's desperately hungry too, and it seems like the nearby billboard advertising a giant bacon cheeseburger was put there just to taunt him. But for now, he'll have to get by with whatever scraps that he can find. Okay, so now this is interesting. This guy clearly enjoys watching Eddie suffer, but he also just saved his life, which shows that he has a deeper goal in mind. Since he's buckling in for a long stay, the first thing that he needs to consider is how long it's likely to take before anyone notices that he's gone. Right now, it's the weekend, and since no one's expecting him to clock in at work on Monday, the earliest that anyone will probably notice is most likely Wednesday afternoon, when he's supposed to pick his daughter up from school. Meaning that he could be stuck here for at least 5 days or more if the old man doesn't kill him first. Now, with that being said, we know from the survival rule of 3 that you can only make it for about 3 days without water, so figuring out how to get some is the next logical step. As rain hits the windows and the moisture from his breath builds up inside, it's going to cause condensation on the interior glass. I'd wait until the morning just before sunrise when the most condensation had built up, wipe all of the windows down with a piece of fabric and wring it out into a bottle or even straight into his mouth. Using this method, he might only recover between 10 and 50 milliliters per day, but it could be enough to extend his survival time. Now, if by chance he happens to have a plastic bag in his backpack, then he can actually use the materials that he has on hand to create an improvised solar still. First, I'd soak one of the socks in sweat and exhaled breath, then place it into his emptied out backpack and stretch a plastic layer over the opening with a small hole in the middle to form a bowl shape. After that, he can tear the bottom off of his empty bottle to make a cup, place it under the hole, and put the whole contraption in direct sunlight. As the sunlight heats the moisture source, vapor rises and condenses on the bag and then drips back down into the cup, allowing him to potentially collect another 20 to 50 milliliters of water per day. and giving him something productive to work on until the next confrontation. It isn't until the next morning when he hears from the owner again, who picks up the phone himself when Eddie refuses to answer, snidely remarking that he could have done that at any time. Frustrated, he agrees to listen to whatever the man says as long as he gives him some water, and the owner happily takes him up on the deal, immediately launching right back into another long-winded story about his life. Eddie here pretends to listen for as long as he can, but cuts him off just as he's getting to the part where two men approached him and his daughter outside of their new apartment. Furious, the owner zaps him with another jolt from the taser, but when he still won't calm down, he starts cranking up the air conditioning to the highest setting and blasting Swedish polka music as loud as possible on an endless loop. At this point, he's clearly trolling him just for the laughs, and Eddie here tries to pretend like it isn't getting to him for as long as he can. But as the hours drag on, and with no end to the yodeling, he finally breaks down and starts begging him to shut it off. Ignoring his pleas for mercy, the owner doesn't even try to contact him again until much later that night. But now that Eddie is ready to cooperate, he finally shuts off the AC without saying another word, leaving him to wonder what fresh horrors he's going to cook up next. Now it's Sunday morning, meaning that Eddie's been trapped for over a day and a half. The rain is still pouring down from outside the SUV, but inside it's as dry as a desert, and desperate for any form of hydration, he decides to gather some homemade lemonade straight from the source. He's not quite desperate enough to drink it yet, so first he goes back to chipping away at the back door, but his best efforts aren't even making a dent, and that bottle is calling his name with every minute that goes by. Sometime later, the old man calls back and mentions that he looks terrible down there, but the oddly specific way that he phrases it makes Eddie realize that he must be nearby, and looking up, he spots the man watching him from a balcony just a few blocks away. Trying to rationalize with him, he says that the man will feel guilty if he dies, but the owner seriously doubts it, showing just how little he cares by cracking open a bag of chips. As William points out, it's hard to argue that killing is wrong when he was the one packing a gun, but he insists that it was just for his own protection. This brings up something that the two of them can both agree on, that the police can't do enough to keep the neighborhood safe, but the owner fails to see how this gives him anything in common with a low-life criminal. Despite their wildly different financial situations, right now they're both in a similar position, because William here is dying from prostate cancer with just a few months to live. That's why he decided to set the trap, wanting to see some real consequences for once instead of just leaving it up to the so-called justice system. Okay, now it all makes sense. The owner here must have watched too many Saw movies because, like he's been saying from the very beginning, the goal isn't to make Eddie suffer, it's to teach him a lesson and make him understand the true consequences of his actions. Yet despite knowing this, Eddie keeps trying to argue with him, even though the man has made it perfectly clear that he doesn't care about his perspective. In his mind, he's right, Eddie's wrong, and nothing's going to change that. So instead of antagonizing him, what he needs to do is start playing along. The reason why it would be better to go with this strategy comes down to basic human psychology and behavioral principles. Although he's incredibly wealthy, the constant break-ins with no help from law enforcement have left the owner feeling powerless. But now that he has Eddie to torment, this finally restores his damaged sense of control. When he tells these long and detailed stories about his past, he's subconsciously reinforcing his own internal narrative, and the feeling that you're being listened to or understood triggers release of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that sends reward signals through the brain. So by letting him talk and feeding into that sense of control, not only can he buy himself more time and avoid unnecessary punishments, but he's also subliminally manipulating William on a newer chemical level, which could pay off if it gets him to let his guard down. Now, earlier he interrupted William just as he was telling a story about a time when he and his daughter were involved in an armed robbery. But if he had just stayed quiet and listened to the story instead, then there might have been a way to spin what happened to his advantage. The story behind that event is pretty much the entire reason why William is doing this, and it seems like the criminals responsible for it were never caught. Being a local criminal himself, Eddie here could pretend like he's heard of the perpetrators and offer to lead William to them instead in exchange for his safety. I mean, it's a long shot, but if he frames it extremely carefully, the old man might just take the bait, and all he needs is one opportunity to escape. Offering him a deal, the owner says that in some less forgiving countries, repeat offenders are punished by cutting off 4 of their fingers. So he wants Eddie here to give him his social security number, and if it's his first time committing a crime, then he'll let him go. But if not, then he'll have to give up those fingers before he can leave the car. Knowing exactly what the man will find, Eddie refuses the offer, arguing that it's still not justice. To him, the system put him in a position where his only choice was to live a life of crime, with laws that were made for the rich to abuse and to keep the poor in a constant state of struggle. Still, the owner insists that the rules work the same way for everyone. It's just that he chose the right path and became successful, while people like Eddie here are always looking for someone else to blame. It's clear that they're not seeing eye to eye, but he didn't trap this guy in a car just to argue with him about society, and now that they've reached another deadlock, it's right back to more non-stop yodeling until Eddie here remembers who's in charge. Night falls again, with no end to the music, but just when it seems like things couldn't get any worse, the owner starts blasting the heat on the maximum setting, turning the vehicle into a sauna with an endless supply of water right outside the glass. Reaching his most desperate point yet, he pulls out the yellow bottle and gets ready to take a sip, but it's still too disgusting for him to stomach. Disappointed, the owner calls and says that he was looking forward to watching him drink it, but he still has plenty of time to make him break. This time the finger deal is off the table, but he promises to turn off the heat and provide him with some water if Eddie tells him his personal information. He's well aware that it's a trap, but he won't make it much longer without something to drink, so reluctantly, he finally tells the owner his full name and social security number. Even then, he still won't give him any water until he says please. And laughing, he reveals that there's been a bottle under the passenger seat this whole time. Grabbing it, Eddie immediately chugs the whole thing down, and the owner leaves him alone for another night. Okay, Eddie here just made a huge mistake. Chugging the entire bottle of water in one shot was the biggest waste of resources that you could possibly imagine, and he's going to regret it as soon as he realizes how much longer it could have lasted. The bottle looked similar to the ones used by the brand Voss, so we can estimate that it contained about 500 milliliters or 6.9 ounces of cold water. According to the experts, the bare minimum amount of water needed to avoid dehydration in survival conditions is about 250 milliliters per day, so about half the bottle. Now, it might seem like drinking more than that couldn't hurt, right? Wrong. You see, chugging all 500 milliliters at once actually exceeded what he was even capable of using at the time, and it all comes down to how your body absorbs water. The small intestine actually absorbs water gradually over time and only as much as it needs, but if you drink more than your body can use, you'll just sweat or pee it out. So when you're severely dehydrated, you actually want to drink small, slow sips, giving your body time to balance out and replenish those intracellular fluids more effectively. In the end, the net hydration that he achieved by drinking the entire bottle was actually less than the full 500 milliliters. But if he would have split the bottle, then it could have lasted him like 2 full days, and if he was really smart, he could have made it last even longer than that. You can actually go as low as 100 milliliters per day and still remain semi-functional, and in the most severe scenarios, survivalists have used extreme rationing to extend their supplies for as long as biologically possible. Theoretically, Eddie here could subsist on the verge of death with only 50 milliliters every 2 or 3 days, extending his survival time to as long as a month with just 1 bottle. By chugging the entire bottle, not only did he waste his resources, but he gave up a powerful bargaining chip and put himself right back at the owner's mercy. So next time he needs to ration any supplies that he gets for as long as possible and start thinking about long-term survival instead. Eddie's just trying to get some rest when he feels something in his jacket pocket, and that's when he makes the most soul-crushing discovery yet. One of the lottery tickets that he never finished scratching was a winner for $500, meaning that he had the money all along. And if he'd only realized it sooner, then he would have never been in this position in the first place. Seeing him laugh, the owner calls to find out what's so funny, and Eddie here confesses that he's finally seen the error of his ways. genuinely admitting that it was wrong to steal regardless of circumstances in his life. For a moment, the man goes quiet, but even after hearing him apologize, he still says that he doesn't feel sorry for Eddie at all, although he awards him with a cookie for his good behavior. As he races to grab it from the glove box, he notices the first weakness that the owner here just seemed to overlook, an exposed fuse box situated at the back of the compartment. Just then, the man receives a call from the hospital informing him that one of his patients has just gone into labor, and overhearing the conversation through the car speakers, Eddie realizes that this might be his chance. Waiting until he's sure that the coast is clear, he quickly jumps into the front seat and pulls open the service panel, snapping a picture with his phone so that he can get a better look. It is a little difficult to get a good angle, but he's finally able to reach the safety switch with the tip of his finger, only to snap his nail in half when he tries to pull against it. Suddenly, the owner sends a jolt of electricity through his body after catching him on the camera, forcing Eddie to put his hands up and move away from the panel, but he's not ready to give up just yet. The following morning, once he's finally alone again, he goes back to secretly trying the switch with his feet so that the owner can't see what he's doing, but it's still no use. Another rainstorm starts, making him realize that he is getting dehydrated again, and this time he climbs into the trunk and grabs the bottle of his own piss, pinching his nose as he disgustingly chugs it all the way down. Okay, ew! You see what happens? This is exactly why spacing out his water supply was so important. Now he has to resort to drinking the forbidden Gatorade Bear Grylls style. The only difference is, that guy is a millionaire with a TV show and he's still trapped in some deranged boomer's SUV. I mean, we've all seen the infamous clip, right? But is there any situation where opening your own emergency lemonade stand would actually help? Unfortunately, the answer is maybe, but it all depends on the circumstances. So the room temperature yellow snow here contains about 95% water and 5% salts, toxins, and like other bad stuff. If it's the first time you're going during the dehydration cycle, then you might be looking at about 50 to 100 milliliters of reabsorbable water, enough to get you through another day, but if you've already been dehydrated for a while, then it's going to contain too much salt and actually force your kidneys to use more water, causing you to become even more dehydrated faster. So if I were Eddie here, then I would have tried any other hydration obtaining methods that we mentioned before and leave this for an absolute last resort. Now the situation isn't all bad because he's also made an important discovery: the fuse box under the dashboard. He can't work on it without getting zapped because the owner says that he's always watching, but logically we know that can't be true. Based on the phone call he received earlier, we can guess that he's a doctor or like an OBGYN or something, and tomorrow is Monday, so if he keeps regular office hours, then he has to go clock in. I mean, a typical doctor's work schedule would be absolutely slammed first thing on a Monday, so if I were Eddie, then I would wait till about 9 or 9:30 a.m. when he was most likely busy at work and make a very sketchy move, like covering one of the cameras to see if William reacts. If he can't draw a response, then there's a chance that he's too busy at work to catch the cameras, and during that window, I would grab the tire iron from the trunk, smash open the glove box, and try to reach the reset switch by hand. I mean, he'll need good luck and good timing to get it right, but if everything goes according to plan, then it just might be his ticket out of there. Hours later, when the streetlights come on, there's still no contact from the owner, but that's when Eddie gets another idea. Reaching for the push-button start, he presses it several times without expecting anything to happen, but to his surprise, the car actually turns on. Relieved, he jumps behind the wheel, puts it in gear, and starts driving out of the parking lot, unable to believe his good luck. But just as he's about to reach the exit, the owner suddenly slams on the brakes, laughing at him for thinking that it was actually going to work. Taking over, he pulls the truck into the road and starts driving it around the city, forcing Eddie to witness the crimes that are taking place on every corner. Eventually, they come to a nicer neighborhood, but he points out that even those houses have security cameras and bars on the windows, and it's all because of criminals just like him. After making his point, the owner steps on the gas and starts whipping through the streets at almost 100 miles per hour, toying with him as they barely avoid one collision after another, until finally he brings them to a stop as they turn down a dark alley where they spot two criminals mugging an innocent victim. Now Eddie here does not like where this is going, as one of the robbers steps out to threaten them, and the owner rockets the car forward without a moment's hesitation, brutally crushing the man's skull under the tires. Terrified, his partner runs for his life with the truck chasing after him, firing backwards into the windshield until he's able to dive out of the way. But he quickly runs out of space and ends up trapped against a locked gate, with the owner slowly crushing him as Eddie begs for his life. making 2 down with 3 more to go. Now, the shock of what just happened finally puts Eddie over the edge, but the owner here is about to take that expression literally. Turning into a parking garage, he speeds up the ramp until they finally reach the very top floor, hurtling towards the edge before suddenly slamming on the brakes at the last second, and causing Eddie to get knocked out again as his head collides with the dashboard. Okay, it looks like officially just got real. Now, the old man's whole point is that the police of the city can't do anything to stop crime, but what he's just done is about to put that theory to the test. He's forgotten that a major part of why the crimes go unsolved is that the criminals are able to blend in with the chaos, but this flashy one-of-a-kind SUV sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, he's just raced across the city drawing all kinds of attention, most likely passing by dozens of traffic cameras and security cameras on commercial buildings. On top of that, he actually left a witness at the scene. He's potentially started a countdown until he's eventually caught, so for Eddie, this means playing along and continuing to stall him is the best strategy. Now, with that being said, after this, it's probably safe to assume that the owner is not letting Eddie go when he's done, so he still has to keep working on an escape plan. He's already spent several hours trying to activate the reset switch physically, but there's another way that he might be able to do it using the tools that he has on hand. If he happens to have a phone or like a vape charger, he can strip it down using his teeth to obtain copper wire, then remove the battery from his vape and connect one wire to each terminal. From there, he can take the other ends of the wire, shove them up near the fuse box, and attempt to tap near both fuse blades at the same time, causing a short that bypasses the fuses entirely and possibly trips a reset in the locking mechanism. Of course, he'd have to do it all while the owner wasn't paying attention, but at this point, anything is worth a try. It's already the next morning when he finally wakes up again, and the owner here is excited to tell him even more bad news. While he was asleep, he says that he found out about his ex-wife and their daughter Sarah, and pretending to be a social worker, he told the family that Eddie would pick the girl up from school today. Before he's even realized where they're going, they arrive outside of the school just as the kids are getting out. And sure enough, there's his daughter getting ready to scooter home, already expecting that her dad is not gonna show up. Following her, he speeds by just as she's crossing the road, tormenting Eddie as he gets closer and closer, but at the last moment, he swerves to the side and leaves the girl alone. Mentally broken, Eddie sits there in silence as they continue driving late into the night, until hours later, he just finally snaps. He jumps up and starts ripping out all the cameras, fighting through the jolts of electricity until he's able to take down every single one. Now that he has some privacy, he sends his daughter a voice message apologizing for all of the times that he failed her as a father, and saying how he always loved her more than anything else in the whole world. He's heartbroken that they might never see each other again, but hopes that the message might go through if his phone somehow connects to a signal. Somewhere on the far outskirts of the city, the truck finally comes to a stop in an isolated parking lot with just one other car already posted up. Watching nervously through the glass, he sees an old man climb out of the vehicle and slowly approach the window, cracking it just to introduce himself enough before zapping him into submission. This is the old man who's been tormenting him for the last 4 days, and handing him some heavy-duty zip ties, he forces Eddie to cuff himself to a steel hook. Once he's followed the instructions, William here places a bag full of sinister-looking tools into the back seat and gets inside to finally confront his prisoner face to face. He's just as talkative in person as he was on the phone. He wants to gloat a little bit about how superior he is to him, roasting the guy for being such a loser as he sits there chowing down on his bag of gummy bears. Knowing that he hasn't eaten in days, he spills some on the dashboard just to watch him gobble them up like a pathetic game of hungry hippos, and turns on some music as they set out for one last drive. Okay, now, if the only thing we're focused on is that bag of tools in the back seat, then things are looking pretty bad for Eddie here. But if he had prepared himself better leading up to this meeting, then there's actually a way that he might have turned around this entire situation. After successfully taking out the cameras, the old man had no way of seeing what was going on inside the vehicle. So during this time, Eddie could have worked on any strategy that he wanted to, so why not try playing dead? Yeah, I know, it's a long shot, but after the severe series of jolts that he received while taking the cameras down, he might be able to fool the old man into thinking that he suffered a cardiac arrest. What would give him away is if the old man looked through the window and set off the taser, but we can actually work around this. The tasers seem to work through wires embedded in the seats, but if he can break the contact between his skin and the conductive material, then he can insulate himself from the shock. If it were me, I'd grab the rubber floor mats that he's been using to occasionally keep himself warm and place as many layers as I could between my back and the seat. Then I'd wait until the old man was about to get in the car and just lie there pretending to be dead. Blech. As long as there's no close contact between his skin and the seat, zapping him wouldn't really cause a reaction, which might confuse the old man enough to carelessly open the door, and at that moment, that's when Eddie could jump him and try to fight his way out. Now that he's allowed himself to be zip-tied, escaping is going to be a lot more complicated, but Eddie here still has a few more tricks up his sleeve. Taking them deep into the countryside, the man admits that teaching him a lesson was never actually that important, and really he just wanted to torment whatever poor criminal was dumb enough to fall for his trap. Basically, it all comes down to Eddie here stealing from the wrong car at the wrong time. Realizing that cooperating won't help anyone, he starts looking for a way to get under the man's skin, and notices that he's wearing a bracelet from his daughter, Emma. When he brings it up, the owner slams on the brakes, bashing his head against the dashboard, and seeing that it's working, he keeps pushing it to make him even more upset. It's enough to distract him, while Eddie here secretly starts reaching for the reset switch, sending him off on another long-winded speech about how his daughter was killed during a robbery, and ever since then he's wanted revenge against the criminals who force everyone else to live in fear. Now that he knows the truth, Eddie here points out that the old man isn't as morally superior as he pretends to be. After all, he's the one who built the trap, took him prisoner, and killed 2 people, so if anything, he's actually like 10 times worse. But when he mentions what the man's daughter would think, he tricks him into slamming on the brakes a few more times, just enough for Eddie to finally loosen up that reset switch, causing the truck to lose power just as they're speeding towards a bend in the road, as the vehicle barrels over the side of a cliff, and in the chaos he accidentally fires a shot into the bulletproof glass, just barely missing Eddie as it ricochets around and hits the old man straight in the back. Flipping end over end, it finally comes to a stop at the very bottom of the mountain, luckily landing right side up, and Eddie here is the first to regain consciousness. But as he's struggling to get free, the old man wakes up and reaches for the blicky. Pulling on his zip ties, he gets loose just in time to fight back, finally getting a chance to give William here the beatdown that he deserves. But just when he's about to kill him, he's stopped by a phone call from his daughter. Worried, the girl asks if everything is alright, reminding him that he's supposed to pick her up after school. He sees the engine starting to go up in flames, but now he's more determined to survive than ever, and reassuring her that he'll be alright, he promises that he's going to be there no matter what it takes. Turning to the old man, Eddie tries convincing him to open up the doors, but he only smiles and says that he had fun before finally succumbing to his injuries. This means that he'll have to look for another way out, and as the flames keep getting higher and higher, he climbs into the trunk to get away from the heat, where he finds an old sledgehammer in the man's bag of tools. Looking around, he realizes that the glass was badly damaged in the accident. He starts smashing against it over and over again until he's finally able to open up a small hole. It's still not enough to get out of there, and by now the flames have almost reached the back seat. But using every ounce of strength that he has left, he manages to break all the way through at the last possible second, escaping just as the fire engulfs the entire car. Getting to his feet, he looks back at the flaming wreckage with a sigh of relief and staggers up to the roadside, leaving the old man's body behind. His phone is completely dead, and he's trapped in the middle of nowhere, so all that he can do is wait until a helpful man in a pickup truck finally passes by. Hitching a ride back to the city, he goes straight to the mechanic with the money from his lottery ticket, but now it's taking too long for them to get his van from the back lot. Desperate not to disappoint his kid, he decides to just sell the van to the mechanics after all, and uses some of the money to buy a little girl's bike that's been sitting there at the shop, surprising her just as she's starting to think that he wasn't going to show up. In the end, that makes 3 down with 2 survivors, and Eddie here has finally learned to be a better dad. But I guess this is why it's still true when they say, if you can't do the time, then do not do the crime. Freaking locked. Dude, you got Bill Skarsgård, Anthony Hopkins in one freaking movie?
God damn.
The star power is off the charts. And, you know, I was a little worried when the movie began with like freaking 10 studio logos. Usually a weird sign, but this movie actually snapped. And I'm proud of everyone involved. Good job. Great movie. And you know, I tried my best to figure out some scenarios about what to do in a locked car, but you guys have to let me know if you would have done anything differently. Let me know down in the comments what you come up with, and thank you so much for watching. Also, leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day!